Early in 2023, history hunters visited the Lone Tree Cemetery in the Fairview district of Hayward, where we visited the grave of actor Carl Becker, who played the mayor of Munchkin City in the movie The Wizard of Oz. We also visited the grave of Indian fighter Robert McDonald, who faced Crazy Horse on a Montana battlefield. On that same visit, I checked out one grave which has a link to Indianapolis 500 history and a tragic end to a racing career. So here's another grave that I wanted to find. It's that of Bob Sweickert. He was a 30-year-old race car driver who died in a crash. He was a 5-time veteran of the Indianapolis 500, winning the Classic in 1955, which was an event that was marred by the death of another racer, Bill Vukovich, Sr., who was killed in the crash while leading and attempting to lap cars at the rear of the field.
Bill Vukovich, the man to beat now, came to the Speedway as midget champion to prove himself in the big cars. He came with the first Roadster, a new design, built especially for Indianapolis racing. Lap 56. Vukovich is flying. He's lapped some cars 5 times and is running through the field with magnificent skill. Roger Ward spins on the backstretch. The way clear, Boyd and Vukovich move right along, but Al Keller spins into them from the inside. Vuki is thrown over the rail, flipping helplessly. Then the announcement. Vukovich, 2-time winner of the 500, has suffered fatal injuries in the 4-car crash. The last lap. The checkered flag for Bob Sweickert. Here he is. 500 miles in 3 hours, 53 minutes. Sweickert led for 85 laps, or a total of 212 and a half miles. And he wins $76,000 for his skill, a share of the record-breaking purse of $270,000. Sweickert gets a victory kiss from Dinah Shore and from his wife, Dolores, to end an unforgettable 500.
The car which Sweickert won the Indianapolis 500 of 1955 is on display at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum. The car, which is a Curtis Craft 500D, was nicknamed the Pink Zinc for car owner John Zink. So Sweickert was also the AAA 1955 Big Car Racing Champion and finished 6th in the 1956 Indianapolis 500. He was actually considered one of the victims of the Sports Illustrated jinx, and that is, if you appeared on the cover, you were soon killed thereafter. He was killed in a sprint car race at the Salem, Indiana Speedway. So what happened on the racetrack? It was June 17th, 1956. He was dicing for 3rd place in the main event on the treacherous high bank of the Salem Speedway when he rocketed out of the track and crashed to his death. He became one of the 17 starters from the 1955 Indianapolis 500 to die behind the wheel. There's a picture of him and Dolores, like they were soulmates, it says here. And his second wife, Dolores Maxine Holt Sweickert, nicknamed Dory, was left behind. They had 3 children, Lynette 10, Stephen 7, and Johanna 2. And she lived to 2016. She was a wife, mother, author, along for the ride to be continued. So apparently they believed in the afterlife. Bob Sweickert packed a lot of memories and success into his 30 years before that tragic day in Salem in 1956. Bob actually grew up here in the Bay Area. He made his living as a used car salesman in his hometown. He actually emerged from the track roadster era when growing up here in the Hayward area. And he instantly showed his prowess in midgets and then sprint cars before heading back to the Midwest in the early 1950s 1952, he made his first start at Indy, but it was in 1953 that put Sweickert in the spotlight. By 1955, the handsome Californian had hooked up with John Zink and the chief mechanic that everyone wanted, who was A.J. Watson, qualifying 14th at Indy. Sweickert charged to the front and led 86 laps to win by almost a lap over Tony Bettenhausen, but his victory lane celebration was muted by the news that Vukovich died. After that Indianapolis win, Sweickert scored another win at Syracuse and combined with 3 runners-up finishes earned the AAA national title in addition to claiming the Midwest Sprint Car champion. It was the first time that anyone had captured the American Triple Crown in the same season, and prompted Watson to say that Sweickert was one of the best on dirt or pavement, and that was a hell of an achievement.
Bob and Dory first met at Hayward High School in the fall of 1942 when Sweikert's family moved to the East Bay from San Francisco. After a complicated, sometimes off and on courtship, they were married in 1953. Dory Sweickert knew the dangers that drivers like her husband faced in the 1950s because cars were not equipped with safety features as they are today. But she said, quote, "I wanted what he wanted. I know that sounds corny, but that's the way it is. It would do no good for anyone to tell Bob Sweickert to quit racing. He would have raced anyway." Dory said that her deep spiritual belief got her through her fears. Quote, "I had to work very hard at that, not to make it a negative. You just couldn't be afraid all the time." Dory was devastated to lose her husband, who was just 30 years old. She was widowed at age 29 and had 3 children now without a father. She really never got over the loss, and in 1998 authored the book Along for the Ride, A Love Story. In 2001, she married again to a man named James Holt, who survived her by half a year after Dory died. And judging by her obituary, it appears that Dory may have suffered from Alzheimer's disease. Her death came 60 years after Bob's fatal crash.
You know, it doesn't take very long for people to be forgotten, even though they achieve great fame in life. Just a generation or two away and nobody knows who they are. It's kind of sobering to think about it.
Before leaving the cemetery, I walked through the veterans section to see the headstones there.
Here's the Lieutenant Wallace Bay of Company G of the 63rd Ohio Infantry. What stories he could have told us, wow.
Buried not far away is Irwin W. Holbrook, who lived from 1847 to 1912. He served in Company H of the 12th Illinois Cavalry. Then I came across the grave of George W. Rankin of Company B of the 135th Ohio Infantry. During the Civil War, he was captured at North Mountain, West Virginia, and sent to Andersonville Prison in Georgia. He was one of the lucky ones and survived. Commonly known as Andersonville, the Confederate military prison facility was officially named Camp Sumter. It was only in operation for 14 months, but 45,000 Union soldiers were imprisoned there in appallingly inhumane conditions. Nearly 13,000 of them died from disease, poor sanitation, malnutrition, overcrowding, or exposure. Some soldiers ended up as the walking dead.
So I want to thank you again for joining us for another episode of History Hunters. It's always fun to revisit history in a cemetery. I know a lot of you like it. Some of you don't. I don't know what to say about that other than the fact that maybe you should try to visit a cemetery and see what they have. Especially if you do your homework ahead of time, you can find some really interesting history in the people who are buried in these locations. It was a beautiful day. I didn't expect it to be so nice here today in Hayward. But I want to thank you again. If you could give us a like and leave us a comment, I would appreciate that as well. Thank you so much.